So not that long ago, I used to open the Mus'haf and literally just stare at the page. I would try to memorize for hours upon hours, and then the next day, literally everything would be forgotten, and I actually thought something was wrong with me. Other days, I couldn't even sit still for more than like 15 minutes. But over time, I made 3 changes and everything else started to click. You see, growing up, I didn't really have advantages in terms of like memorizing Quran. Probably like you, I grew up in a Western country. I went to the whole Western school system and stuff like that. I never went to like a specific Quran memorization school or any of those kind of Sunday schools. My family was like somewhat practicing, so I never really had a crazy head start in terms of memorizing. In fact, I didn't even know how to read the Quran properly until like not that long ago, where I hired a teacher and he taught me how. Add on top of that I grew up in a generation of literally just social media, entertainment, and just tons of addiction. So it's not really that incentive, not really that like kind of push for me to go out and memorize or to learn something. This actually brings me to tip number 1, which is to delete social media. Because the truth is, memorizing Quran and scrolling TikTok 20 times a day, it just does not go together at all. Even to this day, I find myself sometimes where I'm trying to memorize a page of the Quran, or I'm trying to focus in terms of like revision or something like that. And like instinctually, without even thinking about it, I'll like open up a new app or I'll grab some kind of distraction. And this is really because when I was younger, I grew up in this kind of generation of just always feeding your desire for your phone or your kind of app or to something to stimulate your mind with. It made me think like whether I knew it or not, that I trained a lot of the focus out of myself. I trained a lot of the ability of just being okay with being bored out of myself because of how I grew up just always on my phone, always entertaining myself with some kind of technology. And this isn't just some typical advice older people say like, hey, get off your phone or something like that. There's actual studies about this. In 2009, there was a study at Stanford that actually showed that people who task switch a lot, who go from doing things like, for example, you're memorizing and then you open your phone, or you just switch between tasks often, you're actually training your brain to be way more distracted. Not just that, but you become way worse at focusing, remembering things, and just filtering out information, which is like crucial for this hifz process. The more I've been trying to totally unplug from like the modern world in terms of like social media, the whole technology and stuff like that, the more I've actually started to taste the sweetness of memorizing Quran as well. Because it's really rare for someone nowadays to really just spend like 30 minutes, 1 hour just directly reading the Quran. That's like very rare because we've developed a lot of these addictions. And if you've done that, you can first-handedly attest that the feeling you have by the end of that session is totally different than how you started that session. So remember, the time we're in right now has never been easier to complete hifz with all the resources, with everything available. It's so much easier now than it's ever been. But at the same time, it's also never been easier to do absolutely nothing, to just build addictions and to just get distracted with like the modern world. So the next tip I'm about to show you actually made my memorization way faster. And for this, you do need a phone. So if you go ahead and download this Quran app right here and you go ahead and open it, you can essentially select on any surah, any page, and you can just repeat that page through audio, right? So let's say you're trying to memorize Surah Al-Maryam, you can just click on these 3 dots right here, and it'll give you the opportunity to repeat this page or set of verses just on loop. So whenever you're going about your day, you're on the bus, you're at work, or whatever you're doing, you're just walking, and you have this on loop, unconsciously, you're going to be kind of warming up your memory. And just by doing this, it made my memorization way more efficient, and it makes you so you can memorize maybe a page in half the time. And also, but when you do it this way, you're not only memorizing faster, but you're also making what you're memorizing stay in your head longer and you're retaining it better. And we know that part of the beauty of the Quran is that it was actually revealed orally. So listening isn't kind of like some kind of shortcut. It was actually the way it was meant to be absorbed. At the same time, the brain likes multiple forms of input. So if you're reading something and you're also listening to something, it's going to be much more likely that your brain retains it if you were just to do one of them. So if you're not listening regularly to what you're trying to memorize, you're making memorization way harder than it actually needs to be. And the third habit that had a big effect on me, especially long-term, is actually accountability. See, at first I was memorizing totally by myself, just in my room, laying down. And that can actually be beneficial when you start, but there was no kind of pressure, no deadlines to make. And if you're like that, if you have no structure, no program, no deadlines that are coming up, you're much more likely to just be totally inconsistent with your memorization. Because if I missed one day, it was really just up to me. I'd make excuses and there was not really a penalty. But it's kind of just one small change just by hiring a hifz sheikh that I have online now changed everything. Now I actually had expectations of memorizing something new. And now my sheikh actually knew where I left off, what was the last thing I memorized. So I couldn't just come the next week and present the same thing to him. I needed to have something new. Otherwise, it would just be mad embarrassing. And just being held to this standard made it way more serious than it was because it felt like I had to do something. It wasn't just up to me. And it wasn't even just about the pressure, but it was also about the support. Someone who completed their hifz, someone who can kind of coach me and who knows exactly like how it feels like and can give me tips. Just the feeling that, okay, I'm not doing this alone gave me way more effort, way more kind of momentum in this hifz journey. That's actually why I started this school group, because I saw how valuable it was to have just an online sheikh in my life. Imagine when you have a whole program or a whole community of other people doing the same thing. Inshallah, it would be just as valuable. So feel free to join that. The link's in the description. So one thing I realized through all this, it's not necessarily that you need to add a ton of things into your life or you need to add a ton of these like tips or hacks into your life, What's actually more beneficial is just getting rid of a lot of the distractions that might be in your life. Because once I personally did this, once I cleared out the distractions, I added some structure to like this HIV system, and I also just kind of joined that environment that was pushing me. You realize that it's no longer kind of a grind like that, but you fall into more of a rhythm where this becomes like part of your identity, and it's not as hard at all. And just from my experience as well, like the effects of the Quran hit way different when you actually like give it its presence. Because when you're just kind of squeezing it into a distracted life or to a busy life, like a lot of people are doing, yeah, of course, there's definitely some benefit to that, but there's a different level of effect it has on you when you're totally present, like with the Quran, memorizing. Not only will this like improve your memorization, because you're going to be obviously more in the kind of flow state of it, but it just affects you totally differently. So if you're serious about Quran memorization, especially if you're doing it alone, or especially if you're busy, I made a space just for that. It's a free community where we host calls, we share our routines with each other, and we also hold each other accountable. And stuff like this has actually made huge impact on my journey. So I think it will do for you as well. So inshallah, I'll see you inside. And Assalamu alaikum.